Boring history for sleep. How ancient Romans kept their teeth clean without toothpaste 2 hours. When we think of ancient civilizations, we often imagine grand achievements like the Roman Empire's conquest of vast territories or the beautiful structures that still stand today, such as the Colosseum. But while these monumental feats captured the world's imagination, it's the little, often overlooked details of daily life that offer us a more intimate glimpse into how the Romans lived, including something as seemingly mundane as the care of their teeth. In ancient Rome, oral hygiene was far from the sophisticated dental care we have today. No toothbrushes, no toothpaste tubes, and certainly no visits to the dentist's office, yet the Romans were surprisingly conscious of their dental health, even if their methods were, at best, rudimentary. In fact, they had a variety of remedies to ensure their teeth stayed clean, despite not having the knowledge or technology we now take for granted. At first glance, Roman methods of maintaining oral health seem almost comical. They didn't use mint-flavored toothpaste or automatic toothbrushes. Instead, they relied on abrasive powders, pastes, and natural remedies that we would find quite unusual today. To clean their teeth, the Romans employed crushed bones and oyster shells, mixed with various ingredients like vinegar and even charcoal. These mixtures acted as crude abrasives, scraping off food particles and plaque from their teeth. You might wonder how the wealthy Romans, who could afford more expensive treatments, fared compared to the lower classes in terms of their oral hygiene. Did they have access to better tools and substances? The truth is, there was little distinction between social classes when it came to dental care. Oral hygiene practices were relatively uniform across society. Though the upper class did have access to slightly more luxurious treatments, wealthier Romans might even employ the services of a specialized barber-surgeon, who could tend to their teeth along with other bodily needs like haircuts and shaves. What about the use of minty fresh ingredients, often associated with modern toothpaste? The Romans preferred a mixture of crushed pumice and baking soda-like substances that, while effective, were much more abrasive. Mint was indeed used, but not in the way we might expect. It was often incorporated into mouthwashes to help neutralize bad breath, though it didn't necessarily mask the odor of a full day's worth of Roman cuisine. And if you had a cavity in the Roman world, what would you do? Dental treatments for more serious conditions like cavities were often limited to basic extraction, performed by the barber-surgeon. While these practitioners might have known how to pull a tooth, they didn't have access to anything like modern anesthesia, which meant that dental work could be excruciatingly painful. There's evidence suggesting that Romans would sometimes use a mixture of opium and wine to numb the pain during dental procedures, though these practices were far from perfect. So, how did the Romans keep their teeth looking relatively decent, despite the lack of advanced dental care? The key might lie in their diet. Unlike today, the Romans consumed very little sugar in their everyday meals. While the rich enjoyed honey and sweet wines, the majority of the population ate simple, non-sugary foods, which, when combined with their abrasive tooth cleaning techniques, helped prevent the tooth decay that would plague later civilizations. This lack of sugar meant fewer cavities, though it didn't mean that their teeth remained perfectly healthy. But what happens when we look at the dental practices of the poor or working classes in Rome? Did their methods differ significantly, or was there a universal standard for oral hygiene? And, considering how pervasive certain ancient practices were, could the early Romans' approach to oral health have influenced the development of modern practices? The answer to these questions remains tied to an even larger question. Why, despite the lack of modern technology, were the Romans so concerned about their teeth? What might their early attempts at oral hygiene tell us about their broader worldview? As we continue to explore the surprisingly important role that oral hygiene played in the lives of ancient Romans, we must delve deeper into the social and cultural aspects of their dental practices. In a society as hierarchical as ancient Rome, where social status dictated nearly every facet of daily life, how did dental care fit into the picture? Was there a clear divide between the classes when it came to maintaining healthy teeth? Or did all Romans, from emperor to plebeian, share similar practices? The Roman elite, for instance, had more access to luxury goods than their lower class counterparts. While they might have used the same basic ingredients for cleaning their teeth, they often had access to better quality versions of these substances, such as finely ground pumice or even rare, expensive powders. This subtle distinction, while it might not seem significant, underscores a key difference between the elite and the common people in the Roman world. Everything, even the most mundane tasks, had an air of social stratification. For the wealthy, personal care often extended beyond just cleanliness. It was about presenting oneself in the most polished manner possible. As mentioned earlier, the elite would frequently employ a barber-surgeon, a kind of multifunctional practitioner, to manage both cosmetic and medical needs. These barber-surgeons, while skilled at cutting hair and shaving faces, were also the ones who might extract a tooth, fill a cavity, or, in the case of wealthier Romans, perhaps even whiten their teeth. One of the methods used to achieve this gleaming smile involved rubbing the teeth with a mixture of crushed pumice and a paste made of water and vinegar. The elite might add perfume to these concoctions, making the experience more luxurious and perhaps even pleasurable. This contrast between the wealthy's pursuit of comfort and beauty through dental care and the more utilitarian, straightforward practices of the common people highlights a unique tension. In Roman society, personal care was a form of status and wealth, but it was also a necessity for all. Even a simple act like toothbrushing could take on layers of meaning. But what of the common Roman citizen? The plebeians had fewer resources at their disposal and often had to make do with whatever was available. For them, dental care was far less about luxury and far more about practicality. The typical Roman would likely use crude, natural ingredients, like crushed bones, chalk, and even the occasional plant or herb for cleaning their teeth, while the upper classes might bathe in perfumed oils and wear finely tailored clothing. The working-class Roman often had to rely on basic, functional solutions for their personal care. Interestingly, though the common people had fewer resources, they were not completely deprived of opportunities for dental health. Public bathhouses, which were a cornerstone of Roman social life, played an important role in promoting cleanliness and hygiene, including oral care. These bathhouses, often enormous in scale and equipped with steam rooms, cold baths, and exercise spaces, served as places where citizens, regardless of their social status, could maintain their personal hygiene. Some of these public baths even had their own attendants, who would help patrons wash and scrub their teeth, much like modern-day dental hygienists. For the average Roman, keeping their teeth healthy wasn't necessarily an obsession. It was just a part of daily life, another routine to fit into the busy schedule of work, socializing, and public service. Most Romans weren't likely concerned with the possibility of gum disease or tooth decay in the way we are today. Rather, they were more concerned with the ability to chew their food and avoid toothaches, which could prove debilitating. But for those who could afford it, visiting the barber-surgeon for more specialized treatments was a mark of refinement, and perhaps even a point of pride. Of course, dental hygiene in ancient Rome wasn't just about what you did, it was also about what you didn't do. One of the most significant aspects of Roman oral care was the lack of sugar in their diet. Unlike modern diets that are packed with sugary treats, the typical Roman diet consisted mainly of bread, olive oil, vegetables, and grains, with only occasional sweeteners like honey. This lack of sugar helped prevent the dental issues we associate with modern diets, such as cavities and tooth decay. In fact, sugar is often blamed for many of the dental problems that began to plague Europe centuries later. So it's likely that the Romans had an advantage when it came to oral health in this regard. However, Roman dental care wasn't perfect, and many Roman citizens suffered from tooth loss and other dental issues throughout their lives. This was especially true for the elderly, as the absence of effective dental treatments meant that many Romans, as they grew older, lost teeth due to wear and decay. Archaeological evidence shows that even wealthy Romans, despite their best efforts at oral hygiene, often had missing teeth by the time they reached old age. This loss, while common in the ancient world, was sometimes mitigated by the use of false teeth or dental prosthetics, which were made from a variety of materials such as ivory, bone, or metal. What then can we learn from the Roman approach to dental hygiene? How did their practices born out of necessity and limited by technology, compared to our own methods? In many ways, the Romans were ahead of their time. They understood that keeping teeth clean wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about health, survival, and the ability to maintain a quality of life. So, with all of this in mind, we might ask ourselves, what would our daily lives be like if we had to rely on these same rudimentary methods? To maintain our health, would we have the patience for these simple yet effective techniques? Or would we prefer the modern conveniences we have today? As we come to the final chapter of our exploration into the surprisingly significant world of Roman dental care, we're left with an intriguing question. How did the dental practices of ancient Rome influence the course of history? And in what ways do they still echo in our modern world? Looking back at the techniques the Romans used, it's clear that their ingenuity in creating rudimentary dental care methods set the stage for later advancements in oral hygiene. Though they lacked access to modern dentistry tools, their reliance on natural materials such as pumice, charcoal, and herbs reflected a fundamental understanding of the need to keep teeth clean. The Roman approach to dental health wasn't a matter of vanity or cosmetic concern, it was a practical, necessary part of daily survival. While it might seem quaint by today's standards, ancient Rome's approach to tooth care was highly pragmatic. The use of simple, effective materials, many of which are still common today in toothpaste and mouthwashes, demonstrates an early attempt at combating decay and maintaining good oral health. Charcoal, for example, is still used in some modern toothpaste brands for its abrasiveness and cleaning properties. Even today, natural ingredients like crushed bones and shells are used in some cultures to clean teeth, proving that the Romans weren't entirely out of step with modern techniques. Their reliance on these substances in a time of limited knowledge speaks to their resourcefulness. We can also learn a great deal from their approach to dental care within the context of their broader lifestyle. In ancient Rome, oral health was closely linked to personal care, and this connection was emphasized across all social classes, from the emperor to the plebeian. Personal hygiene, whether it involved toothbrushing, bathing, or even wearing clothing in a manner befitting one's status, was a deeply ingrained part of Roman culture. The fact that the wealthy had access to specialized practitioners, while the common people relied on accessible natural remedies, shows the enduring belief that maintaining one's body, teeth included, was a crucial aspect of Roman life. One of the lasting legacies of Roman dental care is the idea that health is not just an individual pursuit, but a societal responsibility. In the Roman world, public baths served as gathering places for both physical and social cleansing. These communal spaces were as much about maintaining hygiene as they were about fostering a sense of Roman identity. It's interesting to consider how these public spaces, where people of all classes could practice hygiene, set a precedent for our own public health systems today. While the Roman baths were focused primarily on bathing, they often had adjacent spaces for relaxation and brushing teeth, laying the groundwork for the future development of public health and hygiene infrastructure. The Romans also laid the foundations for dentistry by encouraging the development of tools and techniques to address tooth issues. We know that Roman surgeons were among the first to attempt more advanced treatments, like tooth extraction, which would become common practice centuries later in Europe. While their methods were far from the precision we expect today, they nonetheless recognized the importance of maintaining healthy teeth and acted upon it in a way that future generations would build upon. It is curious to think about how, despite all the advancements in technology and medicine, we still continue to rely on many of the same principles the Romans used for keeping their teeth clean. Even today, the most basic dental advice: brush regularly, avoid excessive sugar, and visit your dentist is rooted in the same common-sense principles that guided the Romans in their own time. While we may not use pumice stones or crushed bones, the fundamental concepts of oral hygiene have remained remarkably consistent. But beyond the practical implications of Roman dental care, there's an underlying cultural story here. The importance placed on teeth and the methods employed to keep them clean hints at a greater Roman obsession with order, appearance, and control. The Romans were a people deeply invested in public image, both personal and imperial. They saw their bodies as a reflection of their character, and a clean, healthy set of teeth was as much a mark of a civilized person as a well-tailored tunic. This connection between hygiene and status offers a fascinating look at how deeply ingrained Roman values were in even the smallest details of everyday life. And as we reflect on the history of dental practices, we must also consider the broader theme of human ingenuity in the face of necessity. The Romans didn't have the resources or the knowledge we have today, but they still managed to find ways to maintain a degree of oral health that allowed them to go about their lives. They worked with what they had: crushing bones, grinding shells, mixing oils, and created methods that not only served them in their time, but have reverberated through history. In the end, the story of Roman dental care is not just about teeth. It's about a people who, despite lacking the technologies we take for granted today, were able to apply creative solutions to everyday problems. Their commitment to hygiene, health, and personal appearance reveals much about their cultural values and their understanding of the world around them. The legacy of their methods, however humble, continues to influence us today, reminding us that even the most seemingly boring historical details are, in fact, connected to the very fabric of our modern lives. So, as we lie down tonight, perhaps we might take a moment to reflect on how far we've come in terms of dental care, yet also how much we owe to those ancient Romans who, using simple tools and natural ingredients, set the stage for our modern approach to oral health. We might ask ourselves, in the quiet of the night, how might future generations look back at our dental practices? What might they find surprisingly quaint about our current approaches? And, perhaps most importantly, how will they continue to improve upon our methods, just as we've done with the Romans? This story has reached its conclusion, but the lessons it teaches us are timeless. Small, seemingly insignificant actions can have a lasting impact on history. While much of their work was focused on personal care and minor surgeries, barber-surgeons were also called upon in times of crisis. For example, during outbreaks of the plague or other contagious diseases, the barber-surgeon was expected to step in, performing basic treatments or simply providing comfort to the afflicted. In the face of such widespread fear and suffering, the barber-surgeon was often the first person to offer any form of medical intervention. Despite their lack of formal medical training, and while they didn't have the knowledge of germs or infections, many barber-surgeons developed their own methods of protecting themselves, like wearing masks made from aromatic herbs or simply covering their faces to avoid inhaling noxious fumes. The social position of barber-surgeons was complex. On one hand, they were seen as essential, everyday figures trusted by the people they treated and respected for their practical skills. On the other hand, they faced skepticism and disdain from the medical elite. Doctors, who were trained in the universities of Paris and other European centers, looked down on barber-surgeons as little more than quacks. They were seen as unqualified, relying on outdated methods and folk knowledge. Yet, despite this disdain, barber-surgeons remained incredibly popular among the common people, who valued them for their accessibility and effectiveness in treating a wide variety of ailments. One area where the social tension between barber-surgeons and physicians was particularly evident was in the practice of surgery. While physicians were typically seen as the theorists of medicine, providing diagnoses and prescribing treatment, the barber-surgeons were the practical executors. They performed the actual surgeries, whether it involved removing a diseased tooth, draining an abscess, or amputating a limb. Surgeons were often regarded with suspicion because their work was viewed as dangerous and, at times, even barbaric. Amputations, for instance, were often performed without any kind of anesthetic, and the tools were rudimentary at best. These procedures, though necessary, were frequently life-threatening due to the risk of infection and blood loss. But despite these challenges, barber-surgeons held a unique position within the social fabric of Paris. They were inextricably linked to the public's everyday life, much like the town blacksmith or the baker. Their work was seen as vital for the survival and well-being of the population, and their services were sought after not just for medical needs, but for their practical wisdom. In a time when medical knowledge was still evolving, barber-surgeons became known for their ability to act quickly and decisively in moments of crisis, a quality that earned them the respect of their peers and patients alike. For many, a visit to the barber surgeon was an integral part of their routine. It wasn't just about getting a haircut or a shave, it was about ensuring that one's health and well-being were in good hands. Whether someone was in need of a haircut, required a minor surgical procedure, or had simply come to seek medical advice, the barber surgeon was often the first and only person they turned to. In fact, the relationship between a barber surgeon and their client was one of trust and dependence. The barber surgeon, in their role as a healer and personal care provider, was an important part of the social fabric of Parisian life. Their reputation, therefore, depended heavily on their skill and bedside manner. If a barber surgeon had a reputation for being gentle, skilled, and trustworthy, they could count on a steady stream of clients both for medical procedures and for grooming services. But if they were seen as rough or unreliable, they risked losing the trust of their community, which could be disastrous for their livelihood. While we often imagine the barber surgeon as a solitary figure performing surgeries in a dimly lit room, their work was actually much more social. Many barber surgeons worked in shops that were open to the public, where people could gather, converse, and observe the procedures being carried out. This public nature of their work meant that they were not only healers, but also social figures, blending into the fabric of their communities in a way that more formally trained physicians could not do. As we consider the life of a barber surgeon, we might wonder, how did this unique profession survive as medical science advanced? Did the emergence of more specialized doctors and better medical knowledge push the barber surgeon into obsolescence? What became of these men who once held such an important place in society? As the 17th century progressed, so did the field of medicine. The early days of barber surgeons, who had once been seen as essential to the health of Parisian society, began to fade as medical science took new directions. The emergence of more specialized medical practices, new surgical techniques, and growing scientific understanding led to a gradual shift that would ultimately render the role of the barber surgeon obsolete. The change began in earnest during the late 17th and early 18th centuries. The increasing professionalization of medicine, the development of formal medical education, and the establishment of surgical schools contributed to the gradual decline of barber surgeons. In particular, the rise of the medical university and the codification of medical knowledge meant that physicians and surgeons could now pursue formal education and gain legitimacy in the eyes of the public. One of the key turning points came with the formation of professional medical institutions. In Europe, in 1731, the Royal Society of Medicine in Paris Académie Royale de Chirurgie was founded, and it set a precedent for the formal training of surgeons, distancing them from the informal training of barber surgeons. Surgeons who had once learned through apprenticeships, underexperienced barber surgeons now began to study at these institutions, learning anatomy, surgical techniques, and new methods for treating illnesses with greater precision. As a result, surgery evolved from a crude and often dangerous practice into a more sophisticated medical discipline. With the rise of these academic institutions, the role of the barber surgeon became increasingly marginalized. The public began to trust more formally trained doctors and surgeons, who could offer not only more advanced procedures, but also a greater understanding of human anatomy. At the same time, the rise of hospitals and the formalization of medical practices meant that people now had access to more specialized care, something the barber surgeon had never been able to provide. One of the most significant changes for the barber surgeon was the introduction of anesthesia and antiseptics in the 19th century. The pain associated with surgeries had been one of the primary reasons for the public's fear of medical procedures. In the past, barber surgeons, despite their skills, had no way to alleviate this pain, often relying on crude methods like alcohol or simple distraction. But as the field of medicine advanced, new developments such as ether and chloroform made it possible for patients to undergo surgeries without the excruciating pain that had once been a hallmark of surgery. This was a game changer, and it further distanced the role of the barber surgeon from the evolving profession of surgery. Furthermore, With the advent of antiseptics in the late 19th century pioneered by figures like Joseph Lister, surgical procedures became safer. Prior to antiseptics, infections were a common and deadly complication of surgery, and barber surgeons, lacking knowledge of germs and proper sterilization techniques, were often unable to prevent these infections. As antiseptic methods began to be adopted, the medical community saw a significant reduction in postoperative infections, leading to better outcomes for patients and enhancing the credibility of professional surgeons. The decline of the barber surgeon was also tied to the shifting social attitudes of the time. While the barber surgeon had once been seen as a practical figure, trusted for their ability to perform basic medical treatments and surgeries, they gradually became associated with outdated and imprecise methods. The rise of the medical elite, those with formal training and prestigious titles, meant that the barber surgeon's role was no longer seen as central to society. The emergence of medical guilds, universities, and the distinction between physicians and surgeons further cemented the decline of the barber-surgeon. Yet, despite the eventual disappearance of the barber surgeon as a formal profession, their legacy lived on in certain ways. The transition from barber surgeon to professional surgeon was not instantaneous, and for many years, barber surgeons continued to provide basic medical care to communities, particularly in rural areas where trained doctors were in short supply. Furthermore, the word barber still evokes a sense of grooming and personal care. Tying back to the barber surgeon's original profession, it's not difficult to see how the modern-day barbershops, where people still go for a haircut and a chat, are descended from this humble tradition. Linking the past to the present in a subtle yet meaningful way, the barber surgeon also laid the groundwork for the modern understanding of medical practice. While their methods may seem rudimentary and even primitive today, they helped to bridge the gap between folk remedies and scientific medicine. They were the first medical professionals for many people, helping them through common ailments, injuries, and illnesses, even though their knowledge was limited. The experiences of barber surgeons in 17th century Paris contributed to the shaping of modern healthcare in important ways through the development of medical tools, practices, and the recognition of the necessity for training. And boring history for sleep. How the Aztecs used avocados for more than guacamole. When you think of avocados today, you likely think of the creamy, green fruit mashed into guacamole, spread on toast, or added to a salad. But thousands of years ago, in the heart of Mesoamerica, the avocado was far more than just a culinary delight. The Aztecs, who thrived in what is now Mexico, had a deep and profound relationship with this unassuming fruit, seeing it as a symbol of fertility, a source of nutrition, and even a tool for medicinal purposes. The avocado, or Persea americana, was cultivated by ancient peoples as far back as 5000 BCE, but it was the Aztecs who truly understood its value beyond just food. For the Aztecs, the avocado was a representation of life, growth, and vitality. Its rich, creamy flesh was thought to have a close connection to the human body, and it was often referred to as the fertility fruit due to its shape, which bears a striking resemblance to the human uterus. This symbolism led to its prominent role in religious rituals and daily life. The Aztecs believed that avocados had powerful associations with fertility, and it was commonly included in ceremonies intended to honor the gods of fertility and abundance. The fruit's connection to the earth's cycles of growth and renewal made it an ideal offering to these deities. Avocados were often used in rituals involving the agricultural gods, and the fruit was sometimes even placed in graves as an offering for the deceased, ensuring a good harvest in the afterlife. But the use of the avocado in Aztec culture wasn't limited to spiritual practices. This fruit also played a crucial role in the diet of the Aztecs. Rich in healthy fats and nutrients, the avocado provided essential calories and energy for the people who relied on it. As a staple of their daily meals, it was often eaten alongside corn, beans, and other local produce, making it a vital component of the Mesoamerican diet. The avocado's high-fat content made it a valuable source of energy, particularly in the harsh and often unpredictable climate of the Valley of Mexico. Moreover, The Aztecs also used avocados for medicinal purposes, recognizing its potential to heal and soothe the body. The pulp of the fruit was believed to have properties that could treat a variety of ailments. For example, it was commonly used as a soothing agent for skin conditions, as the natural oils in the avocado could help moisturize and protect the skin. Avocado paste was sometimes applied to wounds or sunburns, providing a natural remedy that was both gentle and effective. In addition to its role in healing the body, the avocado was also thought to have a calming influence on the mind. The Aztecs believed that the fruit had the power to ease anxiety and stress, and it was sometimes used in rituals designed to promote peace and mental well-being. The creamy texture of the avocado, combined with its rich flavor, made it a soothing food that could bring comfort during times of hardship or uncertainty. But while the avocado was certainly a useful food and medicinal tool, it also had a deeper cultural significance in Aztec society. It wasn't just a practical item on the dinner table, it was a symbol of the connection between people and the natural world. The avocado's smooth exterior and dense, nutrient-rich flesh embodied the balance of nature, where something simple and humble could hold such power. The Aztecs understood that nature had much to offer, and they looked to the avocado as a representation of that profound relationship. However, the question arises, how did the use of avocados fit into the broader picture of Aztec culture? What role did the avocado play in shaping Aztec social and religious life? And how did it reflect the civilization's deep understanding of nature and the environment? And what might the use of avocados tell us about how the Aztecs viewed the relationship between the natural world and the human body? As we continue to explore the fascinating relationship between the Aztecs and avocados, we must look deeper into how the fruit shaped the social and religious fabric of Aztec society. Avocados weren't just a foodstuff or medicinal tool. They were interwoven with the very worldview of the Aztecs. They reflected how this civilization understood the natural world, the cycles of life, and their connection to the divine. In Aztec society, avocados were deeply tied to fertility and abundance. These themes were central to their worldview, and, as such, the fruit played a prominent role in religious rituals and ceremonies. The Aztecs worshipped numerous gods, but many of them were associated with agriculture, fertility, and the earth's cycles. Among these gods was Tlaloc, the rain god, who was often linked to the fertility of crops. The Aztecs saw avocados as a direct gift from the earth, and the fruit's smooth, rich flesh symbolized the bounty of nature. It is said that the Aztecs would offer avocados during ceremonies to honor Tlaloc and other agricultural gods, hoping that the gods would bless their crops with favorable weather and abundant harvests. During these rituals, priests would often present avocados on altars, and sometimes the fruit would be placed in ceremonial dishes, along with other food offerings. In these sacred spaces, the avocado was seen as a conduit between the earthly realm and the divine, a symbol of nature's generosity that required proper reverence. What is particularly interesting is the connection between avocados and the concept of fertility in Aztec culture. The fruit's shape, which resembles the human uterus, led to its association with both human and agricultural fertility. For the Aztecs, fertility wasn't just about procreation, it was also about the vitality and growth of the land. This symbolic link between the avocado and fertility had far-reaching consequences for Aztec religious life. During major festivals dedicated to fertility gods, such as the Festival of Xochimilco, avocados were featured prominently in ceremonial meals, and sometimes they were even part of rituals that involved human sacrifices. Avocados also held significant cultural weight. Among the upper classes, they were considered a luxury food reserved for nobles, priests, and warriors. This gave the fruit an additional layer of social meaning. It was not only a symbol of life and fertility, but also a mark of status. The elite classes enjoyed the richest and most abundant fruits, and the avocado, being both nutritious and rare, in some regions, was a prized item in their diet. It was often served at feasts and gatherings, where it was consumed in various ways, sometimes with chili, salt, or mashed into a paste. forming the early ancestors of what we now call guacamole. But avocados weren't just reserved for the elite. They were an important part of the diet for all levels of Aztec society. For the common people, the avocado served as a vital source of nutrition, along with maize, beans, and squash. The avocado made up a significant portion of the diet. It provided essential fats, which were crucial for energy, especially in a society where physical labor was commonplace. In fact, the high-fat content of the avocado made it a key dietary component that helped fuel the daily lives of Aztecs, from farmers to artisans to warriors. While it was a staple food for many, the cultural significance of the avocado transcended simple nutrition. It was woven into the social fabric, used as a currency in some instances, and even presented as a gift between allies or leaders. The fruit's smooth texture and rich flavor made it an ideal gift, as it symbolized respect and goodwill. Much like the exchange of prized goods or food in other cultures, gifting avocados could strengthen alliances and relationships. One particularly interesting aspect of the avocado's role in Aztec society was its connection to the land. The Aztecs had a sophisticated understanding of agriculture, using advanced techniques such as terracing, irrigation, and crop rotation to cultivate their fields. In a sense, the avocado became more than just a food. It was a representation of the relationship between humans and the earth. The Aztecs believed that humans had a responsibility to care for the earth, which in turn would provide sustenance and vitality. The avocado, with its connection to both fertility and abundance, was a symbol of the balance they sought to maintain between themselves and the natural world. In the context of Aztec religion, the avocado was not merely seen as a fruit to be consumed. It was seen as a part of a much larger system of beliefs that governed how the Aztecs viewed life, death, and the cyclical nature of the world. The act of consuming avocados in ceremonial settings wasn't just a simple matter of nourishment. It was a way of acknowledging the divine forces at work in their lives. The fruit's presence in religious rites reflected the Aztec belief in the interconnectedness of all things, from the gods to the people to the land itself. But as we look deeper into the role avocados played in Aztec culture, we can't help but wonder, how did the Aztecs, with their complex understanding of the earth and its cycles, come to see a simple fruit like the avocado as such a powerful symbol? What might this say about their view of the natural world and their place within it? Could the avocado, with all its symbolism, have been a way for the Aztecs to understand their connection to the earth and the divine? As we leave Section 2, we must consider these questions. How did the rise of the Spanish conquistadors and their eventual conquest of the Aztec Empire affect the use of avocados and other culturally significant foods in Mesoamerican society? And how does the legacy of the avocado continue to shape both Mexican culture and modern cuisine today? As we arrive at the final chapter of our journey into the ancient world of the Aztecs and their beloved avocado, we are left to reflect on how this simple fruit's cultural, nutritional, and symbolic importance has traveled through time, continuing to influence modern society. The Aztecs revered the avocado for its fertility symbolism, its nutritional value, and its role in religious practices. But what happened to the avocado after the fall of the Aztec Empire? How did it evolve from a sacred food of the gods into the ubiquitous superfood we know today? When the Spanish conquistadors arrived in the early 16th century and eventually overthrew the Aztec Empire, the avocado, along with many other elements of Aztec culture, found itself under the shadow of colonialism. The Spanish, who had a very different understanding of food, agriculture, and culture, were not immediately captivated by the avocado, though they did bring it back to Europe. However, it wasn't until much later that the fruit began to spread beyond Mesoamerica and become a global commodity. In the centuries that followed, the avocado slowly made its way across the oceans, first to the Caribbean, then to Europe, and later to the United States. Its journey was not particularly rapid or remarkable in the grand scheme of history. Unlike the tomato or the potato, which quickly became staples of European cuisine, the avocado's spread was more gradual. In fact, It wasn't until the 20th century that the avocado truly found a place in modern diets, thanks in part to advances in agriculture and transportation that made it easier to grow and distribute. The avocado's reemergence in modern times is fascinating because it represents a sort of cultural resurrection. Over time, the avocado went from being a traditional food of the indigenous peoples of Mesoamerica to being popularized as a luxury food in North America and Europe. In the mid-20th century, the avocado gained fame in California, where it was introduced as a part of the burgeoning health food movement. The fruit, with its rich, creamy texture and high-fat content, was embraced by those who were seeking healthier, plant-based alternatives to traditional animal fats. However, it wasn't until the 1980s and 1990s that the avocado really began to take off in mainstream American culture. Its role in the popularization of dishes like guacamole, which had, in a sense, been made famous by the Aztecs, became synonymous with party foods and casual dining. The rise of Mexican cuisine in the United States, particularly in the form of fast casual restaurants, also brought the avocado into the spotlight. As people became more health-conscious and interested in nutrient-dense foods, the avocado's reputation as a superfood grew. Packed with healthy monounsaturated fats, fiber, and a host of vitamins, the avocado became a symbol of modern nutrition, and its popularity skyrocketed. Today, avocados are consumed around the world, not just in guacamole, but in salads, smoothies, on toast, and even as a topping for sushi. But it's important to remember that the avocado's journey is not just about its spread across the globe, it's about how it has retained its symbolic power. From the sacred fruit of the Aztecs to the hipster food of the 21st century, the avocado has retained its place as a symbol of vitality and health. In Mexico and Central America, the avocado continues to be woven into the cultural and culinary fabric of everyday life. It remains a central ingredient in traditional dishes, from tacos to salsas, and is an essential part of family meals and festive occasions. The connection between the avocado and the earth remains just as strong today as it was for the Aztecs. The fruit still symbolizes fertility, growth, and connection to the natural world, albeit in a more modern context. But the avocado's impact doesn't stop there. Its influence extends beyond the kitchen. The fruit has found its way into cosmetics and skincare products, as its oils are known for their moisturizing properties. In some cultures, avocado oil is used to treat dry skin, and avocado pulp is often applied to the face as a soothing mask. The avocado, in this sense, has transcended its role as food and become a symbol of beauty and wellness, much like it was once revered as a symbol of life and vitality. However, the rise of the avocado has also sparked debates about its environmental impact. As demand for the fruit has increased worldwide, so too has its cultivation, particularly in regions like Mexico, which is the largest producer of avocados globally. While the avocado has been lauded for its health benefits, the industry surrounding it has also raised concerns about water usage and deforestation, as vast amounts of water are required to grow avocado trees, and forests are sometimes cleared to make room for avocado farms. This has led to discussions about sustainable agriculture and the balance between food production and environmental preservation. Still, the avocado's legacy endures. It continues to be a symbol of both ancient and modern vitality, a fruit that has transcended time and place to become an iconic part of global culture. Its journey from the sacred offerings of the Aztecs to the trendy superfood of today is a testament to how deeply food is tied to culture, history, and identity. As we reflect on the avocado's remarkable journey through time, it's worth considering how it has shaped not only our diets, but also our understanding of the relationship between humanity and the natural world. Just as the Aztecs once saw the avocado as a gift from the earth, we too are beginning to recognize its value not just as food, but as a symbol of health, sustainability, and connection to nature. What began as a simple fruit, revered for its fertility and richness, has come to symbolize so much more in the modern world. So, as you enjoy your next bite of avocado, whether in a salad, on toast, or simply as a snack, Take a moment to think about the ancient civilizations that valued it long before it became the trendy food it is today. From its role in Aztec rituals to its modern status as a superfood, the avocado's history is anything but ordinary. Boring history for sleep, the strange origins of the sandwich and how it conquered the world. When we think of the sandwich today, it's a quick, convenient meal, something you can grab for lunch, dinner, or a snack. From classic peanut butter and jelly to intricate deli creations, the sandwich has become a global staple, satisfying hunger with layers of bread and fillings. But how did this simple yet revolutionary food come to be? The origins of the sandwich are rooted in both necessity and innovation, and its history is far stranger than one might expect. The story begins with a man named John Montagu, the 4th Earl of Sandwich, a British nobleman who lived in the 18th century. According to popular lore, the sandwich was invented in 1762 when the Earl, who was a notorious gambler, asked his servant to bring him some meat between 2 slices of bread so he could continue playing without needing to leave the gaming table. This request is often credited with the birth of the sandwich, and as a result, the meal was named after him. But why, you might wonder? Would the Earl need a snack while in the middle of a game of cards? The answer is simple. The 18th century was a time when leisure activities, such as gambling, could be long and drawn-out affairs. It wasn't uncommon for meals to be missed or delayed during these extended periods of socializing. And so, the Earl's solution was practical meat, a staple of many meals at the time, placed conveniently between 2 slices of bread, allowing him to eat without interrupting his game. The sandwich was born out of a desire for convenience during a long, drawn-out session, and it quickly became a popular choice among others who admired the Earl's practical, yet innovative approach to eating. While John Montagu is often credited with popularizing the sandwich, the concept of placing food between slices of bread was not entirely new. The practice of putting food between bread or other forms of flatbreads had been around for centuries in various cultures. The ancient Romans, for example, are known to have eaten panis vocatus, a flatbread that was sometimes used to wrap or sandwich different types of fillings. Similarly, in medieval Europe, people often used bread as a vessel for holding meat, vegetables, or other foods, especially during long journeys or feasts. The sandwich, as we know it today, however, was a product of the 18th century and the increasing pace of urban life. By the time the Earl of Sandwich popularized his creation, bread had become more widely available, and the concept of eating quickly and conveniently was gaining traction. The 18th century also saw the rise of street food, and the sandwich became a perfect option for those looking for a portable, easy-to-eat meal while out and about. But what makes the sandwich so enduring? What made it transition from a niche creation among the British aristocracy to a globally loved food? And more interestingly, why did it catch on in the first place? Despite there being many other ways to serve food at the time, was it the simplicity, the convenience, or something more? As we continue, we will explore the sandwich's rapid rise to fame and its eventual status as a ubiquitous food, enjoyed by people from all walks of life. The sandwich's transformation from a nobleman's convenience to an everyday meal for people across the globe is nothing short of fascinating. While the 4th Earl of Sandwich may have been the catalyst for popularizing the concept, it wasn't until the 19th century that the sandwich began to truly take hold in wider society. In fact, it was during the Industrial Revolution that the sandwich found its place as the quintessential portable meal, one perfectly suited to the rapidly changing ways in which people lived and worked. As cities grew and work moved away from home, many people found themselves spending long hours in factories or at the new offices that were springing up across Europe and America. This shift in lifestyle necessitated a change in eating habits. People no longer had the luxury of sitting down to a long, leisurely meal at home. Instead, meals needed to be quick, easy, and ideally portable. Enter the sandwich, a simple and efficient way to eat on the go. In the early days of industrialization, workers were often provided with very little time for meals. As a result, the sandwich became an ideal solution to this problem. Workers would packed their sandwiches in the morning before heading out for a long day. And these humble creations quickly became the go-to lunch for factory workers, laborers, and office workers alike. The sandwich allowed people to eat quickly, without the need for utensils or elaborate preparation, making it the perfect meal for an increasingly busy and fast-paced world. But the sandwich wasn't just for the working class. Its popularity spread throughout society, and soon it was found at cafes, lunch counters, and restaurants. It began to take on various forms, from simple ham and cheese sandwiches to more elaborate creations with multiple layers of fillings. The concept of stacking ingredients between slices of bread began to evolve, leading to a variety of options and styles. By the end of the 19th century, the sandwich had become a symbol of convenience, efficiency, and modern life. In the United States, the sandwich took on even more forms and variations. The rise of the deli, particularly in Jewish communities in New York, further cemented the sandwich's status as an essential food. The Reuben, the pastrami and rye, the classic turkey club, these iconic American sandwiches became staples in the American culinary landscape, as people from diverse cultural backgrounds brought their own variations to the sandwich. It evolved and adapted, reflecting the melting pot of American society. The sandwich, once a quick snack for a British nobleman, had now become a global phenomenon, tailored to local tastes and customs. However, it wasn't just the working class or urban professionals who embraced the sandwich. As societies continued to change and evolve, the sandwich also became a symbol of casual socialization and leisure. In the early 20th century, the sandwich was often served at picnics, family gatherings, and social events. The picnic basket, packed with sandwiches, became an iconic image of summer afternoons. The sandwich moved from being purely functional to a social food, associated with relaxation and enjoyment. But even as the sandwich became a mainstay of casual dining, there were still challenges to overcome. One of the key factors in the sandwich's success was the constant innovation and creativity that came with it. Different regions and cultures began to experiment with new fillings and flavors, making the sandwich endlessly versatile. Sandwich shops, delis, and cafes were established, each offering their own unique take on this simple meal. The classic peanut butter and jelly sandwich, for example, became a childhood favorite in the United States, while the banh mak, a Vietnamese sandwich made with French bread, introduced a fusion of flavors from both local and colonial influences. Despite the rise of fast food chains in the 20th century, the sandwich maintained its place as a convenient and beloved food. It continued to evolve with the times, adapting to changing dietary preferences, health trends, and cultural influences. Today, the sandwich remains one of the most widely consumed foods in the world, with variations found in nearly every country, from the Middle East to Latin America, from Asia to Europe. As we look back on the sandwich's rise to fame, it's clear that its success was rooted not just in practicality, but in its ability to adapt and evolve. The sandwich became a mirror of society's changing values and lifestyles. It was a food for the masses, one that transcended social class and became part of everyday life. Its flexibility and ease of consumption made it an ideal choice for people living in an increasingly fast-paced and globalized world. But as we reflect on the sandwich's journey through history, we might ask, what is it about the sandwich that allows it to endure and thrive in so many different cultures and contexts? Why, despite its humble origins, has it remained such an integral part of our daily lives for centuries? What does this tell us about the role of food in shaping human behavior, culture, and society? As we arrive at the final chapter of the sandwich's remarkable journey, we find that the humble creation, once born out of a British nobleman's need to eat while gambling, has grown into an iconic and universally loved food. It has transcended its origins, becoming not just a quick and convenient meal, but a global culinary symbol that spans cultures, continents, and social classes. So, how did the sandwich evolve to become the internationally recognized food that it is today? The modern sandwich, as we know it, continues to adapt to the diverse and dynamic culinary world. Its versatility is perhaps its greatest strength, allowing it to be reinvented time and time again, from simple slices of bread with fillings to elaborate multi-layered creations. The sandwich can accommodate every imaginable taste and dietary preference. The sandwich today can be a vegetarian delight, a carnivore's feast, a healthy salad in between whole grain slices, or even a decadent indulgence with fried chicken or crispy bacon. The possibilities are endless, and this adaptability has helped the sandwich stay relevant in an ever-changing world. In countries around the world, variations of the sandwich have emerged, each with its own unique twist. In the United States, the sandwich has evolved into a comfort food for millions. From the classic club sandwich to the popular burger, sandwiches are a mainstay in diners, fast food chains, and upscale restaurants alike. The rise of fast food chains, such as McDonald's and Subway, has made the sandwich a quick and accessible option for millions, further cementing its status as a modern-day convenience across the globe. The sandwich has taken on different cultural identities. In the Middle East, the pita bread and its fillings have become a staple, with falafel and shawarma sandwiches serving as both street food and restaurant dishes. In Mexico, the tortilla sandwich, typically filled with meats, avocado, and salsa, has become a beloved part of the national cuisine. Even in Asia, the sandwich has found its place, with the bao bun in China and the banh mi in Vietnam, both unique takes on the sandwich concept that incorporate local flavors and ingredients. But the sandwich's reach doesn't end with traditional fillings. It has also become a blank canvas for culinary creativity. In recent years, chefs have taken the sandwich to new heights, using gourmet ingredients and presenting it in innovative ways. Artisan bread, truffle oils, and exotic meats are now common features of upscale sandwich creations. Sandwiches have moved beyond simple meals to become culinary experiences. In some of the world's finest restaurants, the foodie culture has embraced the sandwich, elevating it from its humble origins into a food that can be both highbrow and lowbrow, depending on how it is presented. In addition to its culinary diversity, the sandwich has found its way into popular culture. Whether it's featured in movies, books, or television shows, the sandwich has become a symbol of comfort, sustenance, and social gatherings. Think of picnics with friends, packed lunches for children, or the iconic sandwich scene in films. The sandwich's ubiquity in our culture speaks to its enduring appeal and importance. But as we look at the sandwich's global dominance, it's also worth considering how the sandwich continues to reflect broader social trends. The sandwich's flexibility allows it to cater to a wide range of dietary preferences, including vegetarianism, veganism, and gluten-free diets. As more people seek healthier options, the sandwich has evolved to meet these demands. Whole grain, breads, avocado fillings, and lean proteins have become common ingredients, aligning the sandwich with modern health-conscious eating habits. This is particularly interesting when considering how the sandwich started. It was originally created for convenience, born from the desire of one man to eat while playing cards. Today, it serves the same purpose, convenience, but with a much greater emphasis on variety and personal choice. In a world where customization is key, the sandwich has adapted to serve individual tastes, dietary restrictions, and cultural preferences. However, as much as the sandwich has become a symbol of versatility, there are some who argue that its simplicity is what makes it truly special. In a world full of increasingly complex culinary creations, the sandwich remains a steadfast reminder that sometimes the most satisfying meals are the simplest. Bread, filling, and perhaps a bit of sauce, everything else is optional. The sandwich represents the idea that great things don't need to be complicated. So, what does the ongoing popularity of the sandwich tell us about food and culture? Perhaps it's a reminder of the universal need for nourishment and comfort, of how food can serve both practical needs and emotional ones. The sandwich is an enduring part of our daily lives, a meal that has evolved in countless ways but has never lost its essential purpose to provide sustenance, convenience, and joy. Looking back at its origins, we can see how the sandwich has traveled through time, from a nobleman's need to snack during a game of cards to its status as a global icon. It has adapted to fit the changing tastes and needs of societies. cultures, and generations, and will likely continue to evolve. The story of the sandwich is, in many ways, the story of human ingenuity and our ever-changing relationship with food. The next time you take a bite of a sandwich, whether it's a simple PB&J or a gourmet creation, consider the long and fascinating history behind it. What began as a simple request for convenience has grown into a beloved food enjoyed across the world, a testament to the enduring appeal of simplicity and versatility. Boring history for sleep, the peculiar rise of Victorian insomnia cures in the fast-paced and ever-expanding world of Victorian England. Sleep was anything but restful. In an era where the Industrial Revolution was rapidly transforming society, individuals found themselves grappling with new challenges and pressures, many of which impacted their ability to sleep. The rise of factory work, long hours in dimly lit conditions, and the advent of artificial lighting all contributed to widespread struggles with insomnia. Yet, despite these difficulties, the Victorians were not content to simply accept sleeplessness as a part of their lives. Instead, they sought out numerous peculiar remedies and treatments to help them reclaim their nights. At first glance, it might seem odd that insomnia would become such a pressing issue during the Victorian era. After all, many people were working harder than ever before, and the demands of a rapidly industrializing society left little room for rest. But the Victorians were deeply concerned with personal well-being, including the ability to sleep soundly. In fact, sleep was seen not only as a physical necessity, but as a moral imperative, something that directly influenced one's character and ability to be productive. One of the most surprising aspects of Victorian attitudes toward sleep is the sheer number of treatments and cures that emerged to combat insomnia. The Victorians were known for their belief in medical progress and innovation, and this extended to the realm of sleep disorders. Some of the remedies they developed were based on scientific advances, while others were rooted in superstition or quirky, experimental ideas that seem almost comical to us today. Perhaps the most notable feature of Victorian insomnia cures was their reliance on a wide variety of substances, many of which would now be considered highly questionable or even dangerous. From potent herbal concoctions to the use of narcotics, the Victorians turned to anything they could find to help them sleep. One of the most popular substances was opium, which was frequently used in the form of laudanum, a tincture of opium, and alcohol. Laudanum was widely available and often prescribed to treat a variety of ailments, including sleeplessness. The Victorians did not fully understand the addictive properties of opium, and so it became a staple in many households as a quick fix for insomnia. Other remedies included the use of more gentle sedatives, such as valerian root and hops, both of which were believed to have calming properties. These substances were sometimes brewed into teas or taken in tinctures, offering a more natural but still effective approach to achieving rest. Interestingly, while these remedies were relatively mild compared to opium, they were still far from the gentle sleep aids we might consider today. Valerian root, for example, is known for its pungent odor, which was often enough to keep people awake simply from the smell of it, not to mention its sometimes potent sedative effect. Even more curious were the more bizarre and eccentric methods that were proposed by Victorian doctors and medical professionals. One such remedy involved the use of a contraption known as a sleeping machine, which was designed to help a person fall asleep through mechanical means. The machine would often involve a series of straps and pulleys that were supposed to induce relaxation by gently manipulating the body. In theory, the machine would help the sleeper relax their muscles and alleviate the tension that prevented them from falling asleep. In practice, these machines were often uncomfortable and impractical, but they reflected the Victorian obsession with finding a scientific solution to every problem. No matter how unusual it might seem, the desire to perfect sleep also led to the development of various sleep aids, including mattresses and pillows that were specially designed to provide the most comfortable sleeping experience. The Victorians were early pioneers in the development of modern bedding, and their innovations in mattress design have influenced the way we sleep today. One particularly interesting development was the introduction of adjustable mattresses, which could be tailored to the individual's specific sleeping posture. These early innovations, while rudimentary compared to modern memory foam or adjustable bed technology, were seen as revolutionary at the time. Despite all these efforts, sleep disorders were far from resolved, and it was common for people to spend nights tossing and turning, unable to achieve the restful sleep they so desperately needed. So, the question remains, why, despite all of these inventions and remedies, was insomnia such a pervasive issue in Victorian England? Was it the physical and mental strain caused by industrial work, the constant exposure to new technologies, or something deeper, a cultural obsession with productivity that led people to sacrifice their rest? As the 19th century unfolded, the Victorians found themselves increasingly obsessed with understanding the mind and body, including the complex relationship between sleep and overall well-being. In many ways, this era marked the beginning of modern psychology, and the Victorian obsession with sleep was deeply intertwined with emerging theories about the mind, health, and morality. Sleep, for the Victorians, was not simply a physical necessity. It was a moral marker. A person who slept well was thought to be disciplined, well-adjusted, and industrious. Those who struggled with insomnia, on the other hand, were often seen as fragile or even morally flawed. This view reflects a broader Victorian ethos. The ideal was a society of hardworking, self-controlled individuals who could overcome their weaknesses. The inability to sleep soundly was seen as a failure to live up to these high standards. At the same time, there was a growing recognition that sleep and the lack of it could be linked to deeper psychological and emotional struggles. The Victorians were at the forefront of developing ideas about mental health, and insomnia was increasingly seen not just as a physical issue, but as something that could be caused by anxiety, stress, or even trauma. While the understanding of mental health was still in its infancy, psychologists like Sigmund Freud and others of the late 19th century were beginning to explore the link between the unconscious mind and sleep disturbances. Interestingly, some of the most common causes of insomnia during the Victorian era were linked to the stress and pressure of modern life. The Industrial Revolution had introduced a host of new challenges, many of which disrupted traditional routines and ways of living. Factory work meant long hours in poor conditions, and urbanization created crowded, noisy environments that made it difficult to relax and sleep. Many Victorians were also grappling with the consequences of living in a rapidly changing society, where social expectations and personal morality were constantly being tested. Anxiety about one's place in this evolving world, along with concerns about health and productivity, were all contributing factors to the rise of insomnia. In response to these pressures, some Victorians turned to more unconventional methods to address their sleep problems. For instance, hypnotism and mesmerism became increasingly popular in the 19th century. Mesmerism, based on the theories of Franz Anton Mesmer, was a form of alternative medicine that involved manipulating a person's animal magnetism to induce a trance-like state, which was thought to alleviate a variety of ailments, including insomnia. While the scientific community would later dismiss mesmerism as pseudoscience, it was nevertheless a widely accepted treatment for many during the Victorian era. Some even visited mesmerists to undergo sleep-inducing sessions, hoping that the hypnotic state would help them overcome their sleeplessness. But not all remedies were as strange or mysterious as mesmerism. As the medical community began to take sleep disorders more seriously, a range of psychological theories emerged about the causes of insomnia. Doctors began to hypothesize that the inability to sleep could be linked to underlying emotional turmoil, including unresolved stress, repressed emotions, or even guilt. In response, treatments began to shift away from purely physical remedies, and psychological approaches to insomnia began to gain ground. Victorian physicians were among the first to explore the role of the mind in regulating sleep, and to recognize that addressing emotional or mental distress could be as important as treating physical symptoms. While the Victorians were beginning to realize that sleep was influenced by both physical and psychological factors, they still had a long way to go in understanding the complexities of sleep disorders. Insomnia was often treated with a combination of remedies, some practical, some experimental. For example, many people still relied on the use of opiates like laudanum, which were thought to be effective for inducing sleep, despite their addictive properties. The fact that doctors and patients alike were willing to use such potent substances speaks to the limited understanding of the risks involved at the time. But for all the Victorian fascination with sleep, one of the most curious aspects of this period was the sheer variety of treatments that existed. Beyond laudanum and hypnotism, there were some truly strange ideas proposed to cure insomnia. One notable example was the use of sleeping baths, large, heated tubs filled with herbs or aromatic oils. Patients would soak in these baths before bedtime, in the hopes that the warm water and soothing scents would calm their nerves and help them fall asleep. While the practice was certainly more relaxing than some of the harsher remedies, it may have been more of a placebo effect than an actual cure. Another odd but surprisingly common treatment was the use of sleeping pills, which were often composed of combinations of opium, alcohol, and other sedatives. The Victorians were not shy about experimenting with combinations of chemicals to create a perfect sleeping potion. While these pills could induce sleep, they often led to dependence or, in some cases, overdose, leading to an entire subset of social issues related to the misuse of sleeping aids. As we consider the multitude of treatments used by the Victorians, we are left with a central question. Why did the Victorians struggle so much with sleep, despite their growing understanding of the mind and body? Was it the result of a rapidly changing world that left people feeling anxious and uncertain? Or were there deeper social and cultural pressures that made it difficult for Victorians to truly relax and rest? Sleep was viewed not just as a physical necessity but as a reflection of one's moral character and ability to adapt to the challenges of modern life. It was a sign of self-control, productivity, and discipline. Yet, as the Victorians struggled to find the perfect remedy for their insomnia, they also revealed the growing complexity of the human psyche and the toll that societal pressures could take on one's well-being. As we conclude our exploration of Victorian insomnia cures, we turn our attention to how the peculiar sleep treatments of the era left their mark on the way we understand and treat sleep disorders today. The 19th century was a time of medical experimentation, and many of the practices introduced during this period, though often strange by today's standards, laid the groundwork for how we approach sleep science and treatments now. Despite the use of such odd remedies as laudanum, mesmerism, and elaborate sleeping machines, the Victorians were essential in turning the topic of insomnia into a recognized medical issue, one that continues to captivate scientists and doctors today. One of the most significant contributions of the Victorian era to the modern understanding of insomnia was the recognition that sleep was more than just a physiological necessity. It was deeply intertwined with both the body and the mind. Prior to this period, sleep disorders were often attributed to moral failings or spiritual problems. In contrast, Victorian physicians were some of the first to acknowledge that emotional and psychological distress could play a crucial role in the inability to sleep. This shift in thinking has had a profound impact on how we treat sleep disorders. In the modern world, while many of the remedies used during the Victorian era, like opium-based tinctures and mesmerizing treatments, have long been abandoned, some of their principles still resonate in the way sleep is approached today. For instance, the connection between stress, anxiety, and sleep disturbances is now widely recognized, and sleep therapy often includes cognitive behavioral techniques aimed at addressing the underlying psychological factors that contribute to insomnia. In fact, many modern sleep aids, such as melatonin and other supplements, have their roots in the herbal remedies and natural treatments of the Victorians, who experimented with valerian root and hops as calming agents. The Victorian era also helped lay the foundation for the development of modern sleep medicine. One key figure during this period was Sir Thomas Sydenham, an English physician who advocated for the careful observation of patients and the use of empirical evidence to treat diseases. His approach influenced the way doctors began to look at sleep disorders not just as an individual's complaint, but as something that could be studied scientifically and treated systematically. While Sydenham didn't work directly with sleep disorders, his contributions to the field of clinical medicine helped set the stage for the later study of sleep as a medical condition. In addition to this, the Victorians' emphasis on the importance of sleep in relation to productivity and morality has had a long-lasting effect on how we view sleep in contemporary society. Today, sleep is not just a physical necessity. It is considered a reflection of a person's lifestyle and character. Those who get enough sleep are often seen as disciplined, well-adjusted, and capable of handling the demands of modern life. The Victorians were some of the first to suggest that inadequate sleep could not only affect one's health but also one's moral standing. This idea has persisted into modern times, where sleep deprivation is still viewed as a societal problem, leading to increased stress, anxiety, and burnout. However, while the Victorians helped define the importance of sleep and its impact on health, they were also trapped by the limitations of their time. The use of laudanum and other narcotics as treatment for insomnia is a glaring example of how insufficient knowledge about addiction and long-term health effects led to widespread misuse of powerful substances. In today's world, we are more cautious about the use of sedatives and sleep aids, but the past mistakes of the Victorian era remind us of the dangers of over-reliance on chemical treatments. The development of more effective, non-addictive sleep aids has been one of the great successes in modern medicine. Today, doctors are far more likely to recommend lifestyle changes, relaxation techniques, and cognitive behavioral therapy for those suffering from insomnia, rather than relying on narcotics or dubious treatments. These modern approaches can be traced back, in part, to the recognition in the Victorian era that sleep was a complex issue that involved both the body and mind. Yet, despite all of the advancements we've made in sleep science, it's worth reflecting on how much of the Victorian fascination with sleep still lingers in our culture today. The idea that a good night's sleep is a measure of one's health and character persists in our modern understanding of wellness. We've simply traded opium tinctures for over-the-counter sleep aids and hypnotism for mindfulness practices. The Victorians may have been a bit too eager to find a quick fix for sleep problems, but they were, in many ways, the pioneers in recognizing the profound link between mental and physical health. The use of sleep-inducing machines, once seen as strange and experimental, might also seem out of place today. But modern technology, like sleep tracking devices and apps designed to monitor sleep quality, draws upon the same impulse to understand and optimize our sleep. It's curious to think that the Victorian fascination with controlling sleep through gadgets and treatments foreshadowed the sleep technology we use today. Only now, it's a bit more grounded in scientific research. As we reflect on the bizarre and fascinating world of Victorian insomnia cures, we can recognize that they were not just quirky treatments, but rather an early attempt to grapple with a problem that continues to affect millions of people worldwide: the desire for better sleep, for rest and recuperation in a world that demanded more and more from its citizens, is something we still struggle with today. In the end, the legacy of the Victorian era in sleep medicine is one of both progress and caution. While many of their remedies were misguided or even dangerous, the era's push to understand the mind-body connection in relation to sleep was an important step forward in medical history. Today, we benefit from their mistakes and triumphs alike, as we continue to search for the most effective and holistic ways to achieve the restful sleep that the Victorians so desperately sought. Boring history for sleep: how the Vikings lived without modern medicine. When we think of the Vikings, images of fearsome warriors charging into battle or sailing across the seas to raid distant lands often come to mind. These Norsemen, who thrived between the 8th and 11th centuries, are remembered for their prowess in battle, their advanced seafaring skills, and their daring exploration of new territories. But while much of their history is dominated by tales of conquest and plunder, there's an often overlooked aspect of Viking life: their struggle with illness, injury, and survival without the modern medicine that we take for granted today. The Vikings were, in many ways, a product of their time, a time when healthcare was rudimentary. and survival often depended on physical strength, resourcefulness, and community. With little to no knowledge of germs, bacteria, or viruses, Viking medicine was based primarily on folk remedies, trial and error, and the use of natural resources. Healing was often a communal affair, with family members or village healers playing vital roles in the treatment of illnesses and injuries. In the harsh northern climate of Scandinavia, where winters were long and bitterly cold, the Vikings had to be resilient. They faced numerous challenges to their health, from infections to the threat of malnutrition, and their remedies were often focused on keeping the body strong and healthy in the face of these dangers. However, despite their impressive survival skills, the Vikings had no real understanding of hygiene, sanitation, or the role of bacteria in disease transmission. They had to rely on what was available to them in nature to fight off illness, and many of their treatments seem primitive by modern standards. Take, for instance, the common Viking practice of using herbs and plants to treat ailments. The Vikings had a deep knowledge of the natural world and would often use a wide variety of plants for medicinal purposes. For instance, juniper berries were used to treat urinary issues and to help purify the blood, while willow bark was used as a pain reliever. The Vikings didn't know the chemical properties of these plants, but they learned through trial and error which ones could be used to alleviate symptoms or cure illnesses. Some of these herbal remedies were remarkably effective, and their use continued well into the Middle Ages and beyond. But Viking medicine was not just about herbs. They also had a complex understanding of the human body and how to treat injuries. In battle, Vikings were frequently injured, and their ability to heal quickly could determine their survival. Bone fractures, deep cuts, and other wounds were often treated with basic tools like bone needles and thread to stitch up wounds. However, without the knowledge of sterilization, infections were a constant risk. The Vikings were not immune to the horrors of sepsis or gangrene, and many warriors who survived the initial battle wounds would later succumb to infection. Surgery, although crude, was also practiced among the Vikings. Archaeological evidence suggests that some Viking warriors had trepanation holes drilled into the skull performed to treat head injuries or relieve pressure from brain trauma. This primitive form of surgery was carried out without any anesthesia, and the success rate is unknown. Some warriors may have survived, while others, weakened by the procedure or infected by the lack of proper hygiene, did not. Perhaps one of the most surprising aspects of Viking medicine was their use of runes and magic. The Vikings believed in a powerful spiritual world that could influence their daily lives, and many turned to rune stones and magical incantations for healing. Shamans, or seers known as Volvas, would perform rituals and chants to protect the sick or ward off evil spirits, believing that these spiritual practices could aid in the recovery of health. While there's little evidence to support the efficacy of these magical practices, they were an integral part of Viking culture and provided a sense of hope and comfort in a harsh world. But despite these rituals and remedies, the Vikings were not immune to the devastating effects of illness. Like most people of their time, they faced a high mortality rate due to diseases that we can now prevent or cure with modern medicine. Illnesses like tuberculosis, smallpox, and even the common cold could have deadly consequences. Vikings had number vaccines or antibiotics, and their immune systems were left to fight infections with limited resources. So, how did the Vikings survive and thrive in such a harsh environment? Without the medical knowledge we now have, was it purely their strength and resilience that allowed them to endure, or was there something more at play? And, perhaps most intriguingly, what can we learn from their approach to health and survival in a time so far removed from our own? In Viking society, survival was as much about the support of the community as it was about individual resilience. While warriors might have been the most visible members of Viking society, they were only part of a much larger social structure that emphasized collective strength. From childbirth to illness to aging, the Vikings relied heavily on the resources and expertise of those around them to ensure their survival. One of the most important factors in maintaining Viking health was their diet. Given the harsh environment they lived in, the Vikings were resourceful in sourcing food, and their diet was adapted to the cold northern climates. Meat, fish, and dairy were staples in their daily meals. Wild game, such as elk, deer, and boar, was hunted, while domesticated animals like cattle, sheep, and pigs were raised for meat and milk. The Vikings also relied heavily on fish, with herring and cod being particularly abundant in the coastal areas they inhabited. However, it wasn't just about meat. The Vikings also consumed a variety of grains, such as barley, oats, and rye, which were used to make bread, porridge, and beer. These grains were essential sources of carbohydrates, providing much-needed energy for their physically demanding lifestyles. Vegetables like cabbage, onions, and leeks were common, and they grew well in the cooler climate. The Vikings also cultivated root vegetables, including turnips and carrots, which could withstand the colder months. In addition, fruits like apples, berries, and wild herbs were foraged to supplement their diet. Interestingly, Viking nutrition was relatively balanced, despite the lack of knowledge we have today about vitamins and minerals. Fish, for example, was rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which helped maintain heart health, while dairy products provided calcium and protein. Meat, particularly red meat from wild game, was a valuable source of iron and other nutrients that supported strong muscles and bones. These foods, along with the energy provided by grains and vegetables, formed a foundation of sustenance that helped the Vikings maintain their strength and stamina, both in battle and in everyday life. However, despite their strong diet, the Vikings were far from immune to nutritional deficiencies. Their reliance on meat, especially in the colder months when vegetables were less abundant, sometimes led to an overemphasis on protein and fat. This could result in a lack of certain vitamins and minerals, which could make them more susceptible to illness. For example, without the ability to obtain fresh fruits and vegetables year-round, they may have lacked enough vitamin C, which is essential for preventing scurvy. Scurvy, often caused by a vitamin C deficiency, was a common affliction for sailors on long voyages, and while the Vikings didn't fully understand the science behind it, they may have experienced similar health challenges during their extensive travels. Despite these potential nutritional shortcomings, Viking society emphasized health in ways that went beyond diet. Community life was integral to survival, and people relied on each other for care, support, and knowledge. Healers, who were often knowledgeable about herbs and natural remedies, were key figures in Viking villages. These individuals, sometimes referred to as wise women or herbalists, were trusted to cure ailments, deliver babies, and offer advice on health matters. They would gather herbs and roots from the forests, fields, and even the seashore, using plants like yarrow, nettle, and mugwort to treat a variety of conditions. These village healers were integral to Viking society, as medical knowledge was passed down through generations, often in the form of oral traditions. They knew which plants to use for wounds, how to alleviate symptoms of common illnesses, and how to prepare remedies for everything from fevers to digestive issues. The Vikings' reliance on these healers was a testament to the importance of community knowledge and collective survival in a time before formal medical education. In addition to herbal remedies, the Vikings also believed in the importance of physical fitness. For many, staying fit was a matter of survival. Battle was a constant part of their lives, and a warrior's strength could mean the difference between life and death. Even non-warriors, like farmers and craftsmen, needed to stay in good shape to endure the hardships of daily life. As a result, physical activity was woven into the fabric of Viking culture. Men and women alike worked hard to maintain their stamina, whether through farming, sailing, or maintaining the infrastructure of their villages. Physical labor was not just about work, it was also about building strength and resilience. The Vikings also understood the value of rest and recovery, even if they didn't have the medical knowledge to back it up. After battles, long voyages, or days of labor, the Vikings would retreat to their homes to recover. While modern medicine tells us the importance of sleep and healing, the Vikings likely understood this on a more instinctive level. Rest allowed the body to recover from physical exertion and injuries, and the Vikings valued their time at home with family, where they could restore their energy for the challenges ahead. But what is perhaps most remarkable about Viking survival was the sense of community care that underpinned it. Despite their often brutal reputation, The Vikings relied on mutual support to thrive in the absence of modern medicine. It was the collective effort of family, neighbors, and healers that enabled them to survive in a harsh environment. From shared meals to healing rituals to physical support, the Vikings understood that survival depended on the strength of their bonds with one another. This brings us to a question: how much did the Vikings' deep-rooted sense of community and reliance on natural remedies contribute to their resilience and ability to survive in a time without modern medicine? Was it simply their physical toughness, or was it something more, the power of shared knowledge and cooperative living? As we close our exploration of Viking health and medicine, we can reflect on how their unique approach to survival without modern medicine shaped their society and what lessons we can take from their experiences today. The Vikings, with all their prowess in battle, seafaring, and exploration, were also a society deeply attuned to their environment and the physical demands placed on their bodies. Their reliance on communal knowledge, herbal remedies, and a balanced diet was essential to their ability to survive harsh conditions. But many of the challenges they faced in maintaining health were ultimately beyond their control. What is perhaps most striking about Viking life is their resilience. They thrived in one of the harshest climates in Europe, Scandinavia, where winters were long. Food sources could be scarce, and battles with both people and nature were frequent. And yet, despite all these challenges, the Vikings managed to live robust lives that allowed them to not only survive, but also to conquer and explore much of the known world. Their ability to endure illness, injury, and the physical stress of constant travel, battle, and hard labor was rooted in their practical use of what little knowledge they had about health and healing. Their diet, rich in protein and fatty acids from fish and meat, helped them to maintain strong bodies. Their communal way of life ensured that no one was left to fend for themselves. When they fell ill or faced injury, Viking society understood the importance of treating both the body and the mind with respect, relying on remedies like herbal concoctions, restorative sleep, and physical strength to cope with the demands of their environment. Interestingly, modern medicine and health practices are beginning to rediscover some of the very things that Vikings relied on. In recent years, there has been a renewed interest in the benefits of herbal medicine, with plants like yarrow, elderberry, and willow bark seeing a resurgence in alternative health circles. The Vikings may not have known about the biochemical compounds in these plants, but they intuitively understood which herbs could help with pain relief, wound healing, or fever reduction. Similarly, the value of a diet rich in healthy fats and proteins, such as the diet the Vikings consumed, is gaining renewed attention today, particularly in the context of modern diets that emphasize whole, unprocessed foods. The Vikings were far ahead of their time in understanding how food could fuel and nourish the body, even though they didn't have the nutritional science to explain it. Modern health experts have also started to focus on the importance of community support in health and wellness, a concept that the Vikings understood on a deeply ingrained level. The communal lifestyle of the Vikings, where extended families and neighbors played a role in helping each other with everything from food to healing, can now be seen as a key factor in mental health and recovery. In an age where loneliness and isolation are considered major contributors to physical and mental health problems, we're rediscovering the importance of strong, supportive communities, something the Vikings inherently grasped. Furthermore, the Vikings' emphasis on physical fitness through labor, battle, and sailing reminds us of the importance of keeping the body active and resilient in the face of daily stressors. While modern medicine places a great deal of focus on sedentary lifestyle-related diseases, the Vikings' approach to physical exertion was a natural, integral part of their existence. Today, experts continually highlight the importance of staying active throughout life, particularly as we age, to preserve our health and well-being. The Vikings' daily routines, which combined labor, exercise, and survival tasks, naturally promoted this kind of physical fitness. However, one of the most striking aspects of Viking life, and one that continues to resonate in modern times, is the way they adapted to the challenges they faced without the benefit of modern medicine. The Vikings were forced to rely on their instincts, their communities, and their environment to survive. While this may seem primitive by today's standards, It also highlights a certain wisdom, the ability to adapt to one's surroundings and to make do with what is available. Even with their resourcefulness and resilience, though, the Vikings were not immune to the challenges of disease and injury. Many of them did not live to an old age, and even if they survived battle and sickness, the risks of infection and malnutrition remained. The Vikings had no understanding of germs or bacteria, and while their use of herbs and natural remedies was useful, it did not guarantee survival. Many likely perished from infections, trauma, or disease, factors that were beyond their control in a world without modern antibiotics or surgical techniques. But the Viking approach to survival offers a valuable lesson for us today. We are often quick to dismiss past practices as outdated or primitive, but in reality, many of the principles the Vikings followed, such as community care, a balanced diet, physical fitness, and a connection to nature, are still deeply relevant to modern health practices. In fact, some of the best things we can do for our health today are rooted in those ancient, natural solutions: eating whole foods, staying active, and fostering strong social connections. As we reflect on the Viking legacy, we might ask ourselves how we can incorporate some of these ancient practices into our modern lives. How can we reconnect with nature, embrace a more communal approach to health, and value the simple, time-tested wisdom of past generations? And perhaps, in a world increasingly reliant on technology and modern medicine, what can we learn from the Vikings about self-reliance, resilience, and the strength to endure? In the end, the Vikings may have lived without modern medicine, but they lived with a profound understanding of the human body and spirit, one that, even today, continues to offer us valuable insights into how we might live healthier, more resilient lives. Boring history for sleep. The life of Cleopatra. More than just a queen. When we hear the name Cleopatra, we often think of a powerful queen, one of the most famous rulers in history, known for her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Her reign over Egypt, marked by intrigue, politics, and military strategy, continues to captivate us today. However, there's so much more to Cleopatra's life than the images of romance and political maneuvering that we've come to associate with her name. Cleopatra VII Theophilopator, born in 69 BCE, was not born to a life of luxury and power as many assume. She was part of the Ptolemaic dynasty, which ruled Egypt. But the Ptolemies were originally Greek, having taken control of Egypt after Alexander the Great's death. Cleopatra's family was notorious for internal strife, and by the time she was born, the Ptolemaic throne had been marked by political instability, murder, and intrigue. Her father, Ptolemy XII, had spent much of his reign struggling to maintain control over Egypt against both internal rebellion and external pressures, including Rome's growing influence in the Mediterranean. Her early life was likely filled with tension and political complexity. As the daughter of Ptolemy XII, Cleopatra would have been educated in the royal court and trained in diplomacy, rhetoric, and governance. It is said that Cleopatra was highly intelligent and spoke several languages in common for a ruler. At the time, especially for a woman, she was not only educated in the Greek tradition, but also immersed herself in Egyptian culture, learning the Egyptian language and adopting the persona of the goddess Isis to strengthen her connection with the Egyptian people. This deep understanding of both Greek and Egyptian customs would prove vital in her efforts to unite Egypt under her rule and secure her position. When Cleopatra was just 18 years old, her father passed away, and she became co-ruler with her younger brother Ptolemy XIII, who was only about 10 at the time. This early partnership with her brother would quickly prove challenging. Ptolemy XIII's regents and advisors, however, were less than thrilled with the idea of a powerful woman ruling beside the young king. Thus began a power struggle within the royal family. Cleopatra's brother and his advisors pushed her out of power, forcing her to flee into exile. This early conflict was a pivotal moment in Cleopatra's life. Instead of resigning herself to obscurity or accepting a passive role, she fought back. In fact, it was during her exile that Cleopatra began plotting her return to power. She was not only a political strategist, but also a master of alliances. She quickly recognized the importance of Rome, the emerging superpower in the Mediterranean, and sought to align herself with powerful Roman figures in order to restore her position. The early years of Cleopatra's life were marked by the careful navigation of royal power struggles and the political realities of a world dominated by Roman influence. At the heart of her story is not only her famous romantic entanglements, but her political genius. Cleopatra's ability to wield power was shaped by her early experiences in the royal court. The fact that she rose from exile to become the sole ruler of Egypt speaks volumes about her intelligence, determination, and capacity to understand the political landscape. But what was Cleopatra really like, beyond the portraits and myths? What were the skills and characteristics that allowed her to survive a complex, dangerous world? And what role did her youth and early struggles play in shaping her future decisions? These questions remain at the heart of Cleopatra's legacy. While the history books often focus on her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, there's much more to her life that reveals her as a shrewd and capable ruler who understood the delicate balance of power in a world dominated by men. Cleopatra's life was defined not just by her ability to navigate the treacherous waters of her own royal court, but by her profound understanding of the broader geopolitical landscape, particularly the rise of Rome. As a ruler of Egypt, Cleopatra was aware that her kingdom was precariously positioned between the two great powers of the Mediterranean world, Rome and Persia. In order to secure Egypt's independence, Cleopatra needed to outmaneuver not only rival Egyptian factions, but also the looming shadow of Rome's imperial ambitions. Cleopatra's first significant political move came when she restored herself to the throne, securing her position as co-ruler with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIV. But the real turning point in her reign came in 48 BCE when Julius Caesar, the leader of Rome, came to Egypt in pursuit of his rival, Pompey. After Pompey's defeat at the Battle of Pharsalus, he fled to Egypt, seeking refuge. Instead of offering Pompey asylum, Cleopatra's advisors had him executed, which led to a series of complex diplomatic moves that would intertwine her fate with Rome's. Cleopatra understood that Caesar was the key to securing her throne. She also understood that her survival and Egypt's future depended on aligning herself with the most powerful man in the Roman world. In a move that would solidify her legacy, Cleopatra is said to have had herself smuggled into Caesar's presence, in a carpet literally rolled up and delivered to his room. The story, whether entirely true or embellished over time, symbolizes her boldness and cunning in navigating the politics of Rome. The meeting between Cleopatra and Julius Caesar marked the beginning of one of history's most famous alliances. Their relationship went beyond the personal. It was political and strategic. Cleopatra quickly proved herself to Caesar not just as a lover, but as a capable and intelligent leader. She was fluent in multiple languages, highly educated, and knowledgeable about the intricacies of Roman politics. Caesar, in turn, saw in Cleopatra a powerful ally who could help him secure Egypt's loyalty to Rome while also providing him with the riches of Egypt, which were crucial to his ambitions. Cleopatra and Caesar's union was not only romantic, it had significant political implications. After their meeting, Cleopatra was restored to power in Egypt, this time as sole ruler. With her brother Ptolemy XIV removed from the throne, the two lovers had a child, Ptolemy XV Caesar, commonly known as Caesarion, who was proclaimed as Caesar's son. This child's birth cemented the connection between Cleopatra and Caesar, and through Caesarion, Cleopatra's lineage could claim a potential connection to the powerful ruler of Rome. This relationship, however, was not without its challenges. The alliance between Cleopatra and Caesar was controversial both in Egypt and in Rome. Cleopatra's relationship with Caesar was met with disapproval by some in Rome, especially as Caesar's political rivals feared that Cleopatra's growing influence would undermine the Roman Republic. In Egypt, Cleopatra was also facing the opposition of those who sought to overthrow her and restore Egypt's traditional, independent governance. In the end, Caesar's assassination in 44 BCE dramatically altered the course of Cleopatra's political strategy. With Caesar's death, Cleopatra's influence in Rome waned, as she found herself once again in need of a powerful Roman ally. This time, however, her focus would turn to another leading figure in Rome, Mark Antony. After Caesar's death, Rome was embroiled in a power struggle between his supporters, including Mark Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus. Mark Antony, one of Caesar's closest allies, became the natural choice for Cleopatra to forge another strategic alliance. Cleopatra traveled to Tarsus in modern-day Turkey to meet Antony in 41 BCE, and their encounter would once again change the political landscape. Mark Antony, much like Julius Caesar before him, was captivated by Cleopatra's charm, intelligence, and political savvy. But more than that, he recognized her as a vital ally in his ongoing struggle with Octavian, Caesar's heir. Antony and Cleopatra's union was not just political, it was also a personal relationship, and together they had 3 children. The birth of these children symbolized not only a bond between two powerful individuals, but also the possibility of a new political order in the Roman world. Their alliance, however, was highly controversial in Rome, especially after Antony and Cleopatra's lavish display of wealth and power. The Roman public, already suspicious of Antony's growing ties to Egypt, saw his relationship with Cleopatra as a threat to Roman values and interests. Octavian, seeking to consolidate power, used Antony and Cleopatra's alliance as a political weapon, painting them as enemies of Rome. The ensuing propaganda campaign ultimately led to the final confrontation between the forces of Octavian and those of Antony and Cleopatra. The Battle of Actium in 31 BCE marked the decisive moment in this struggle. Despite their best efforts, Antony and Cleopatra were defeated by Octavian's forces, and this defeat led to their eventual suicides in 30 BCE. Cleopatra, facing the reality of defeat and the fall of Egypt's sovereignty, chose to end her life with Antony rather than face humiliation and captivity. But even in death, Cleopatra's legacy endured. Her story has been immortalized through history, literature, and the arts, and she continues to captivate our imaginations as one of the most powerful and enigmatic women in history. Cleopatra's political mastery, her ability to navigate complex relationships, form powerful alliances, and secure Egypt's interests offers lessons in diplomacy, leadership, and resilience. While her life was shaped by political necessity, it was also defined by a remarkable ability to adapt to the shifting tides of power, to use both her intellect and her charm to secure her place in history. As we consider Cleopatra's legacy, we are left to ask, what can we learn from her ability to use her personal relationships as political tools? And how did she, as a woman in a male-dominated world, manage to not only survive, but thrive in the cutthroat environment of ancient politics? Cleopatra's death marked the end of both her life and the Ptolemaic dynasty's reign in Egypt. But her legacy has never truly faded. For centuries, her life has been shrouded in myth, legend, and fascination. Cleopatra's name is synonymous with power, beauty, and intrigue. Yet her reign was defined by much more than romantic entanglements with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. It was her remarkable political and diplomatic skills that allowed her to survive and thrive in a world dominated by powerful men. Her legacy is as much about her intelligence and leadership as it is about her relationships with those men. Following her death in 30 BCE, Egypt was absorbed into the Roman Empire, and the ancient kingdom that had once been a dominant force in the Mediterranean world became just another province in the ever-expanding Roman territory. The fall of Egypt was a blow to the region's sovereignty, but Cleopatra's story transcended that loss. Her name would endure, not only because of her dramatic alliances, but also because of the way she navigated the complex world of politics and power. Cleopatra's legacy was carefully shaped in the centuries after her death. Roman writers and historians, many of whom were far from sympathetic to her, painted her as both a seductress and a manipulator. The Roman Emperor Augustus, for example, used Cleopatra's relationship with Antony as a way to discredit his rival, painting her as a dangerous foreign influence who sought to undermine Rome's power. This portrayal of Cleopatra as a manipulative woman whose beauty and charm were her greatest weapons persisted through much of history, contributing to her reputation as a femme fatale. Yet, in the modern era, there has been a shift in how we view Cleopatra. She is now seen as a figure of incredible political savvy, a woman who was ahead of her time in understanding the intricacies of power and diplomacy. Her ability to align herself with two of Rome's most powerful men, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, was not simply a matter of love or lust. It was a strategic choice that allowed her to maintain Egypt's independence in a world that was increasingly being dominated by Rome. One of the most interesting aspects of Cleopatra's legacy is the way she blended her Egyptian identity with her Greek heritage. As a descendant of the Ptolemaic dynasty, Cleopatra was Greek by blood, yet she understood the importance of identifying with her Egyptian subjects. In a world where leaders often struggled to maintain the loyalty of the people they ruled, Cleopatra worked tirelessly to present herself as the living goddess Isis, the embodiment of Egyptian culture. This connection with the divine helped her solidify her power among her people and ensured that she was seen not just as a foreign ruler, but as the rightful queen of Egypt. Her intellectual abilities also contributed to her lasting legacy. Cleopatra was known for her sharp mind and her command of several languages, including Egyptian, Greek, and Latin. She was not merely a political figurehead. She was a scholar and a strategist who understood the art of diplomacy and governance. Cleopatra's ability to speak to both her Egyptian subjects and the Roman world in their respective languages demonstrated her political acumen and her ability to bridge cultural divides. In modern times, Cleopatra's legacy has been explored through a wide range of mediums: films, literature, plays, and academic studies. Perhaps the most famous portrayal of Cleopatra is Elizabeth Taylor's performance in the 1963 film Cleopatra, which further cemented her as an icon of glamour, power, and beauty. Yet, despite the emphasis on her romantic relationships in popular culture, these portrayals often obscure the fact that Cleopatra was, above all, a highly skilled ruler who made difficult decisions to protect her kingdom and people. In the academic world, historians and scholars have sought to uncover a more nuanced understanding of Cleopatra's reign, moving beyond the myths and focusing on her political and military accomplishments. Some have even argued that Cleopatra's relationship with Caesar and Antony was a product of necessity rather than desire. Both of these men represented political and military power that Cleopatra needed in order to secure her position in a rapidly changing world. Her alliances were not just about personal affection. They were about survival and maintaining Egypt's independence in a time when larger forces threatened to absorb it into the Roman Empire. The fascination with Cleopatra endures, in part, because she was a woman who defied the expectations of her time. In an era where women had few opportunities to wield political power, Cleopatra managed to rule an empire and lead armies, all while maintaining the delicate balance of navigating her relationships with Rome. Her legacy, therefore, serves as both a testament to her unique leadership and an enduring symbol of the complexities of power in a patriarchal world. As we reflect on Cleopatra's life and legacy, we might ask ourselves, what lessons can we learn from her ability to navigate the male-dominated political world of ancient Rome and Egypt? How did Cleopatra's strategic mind and diplomatic savvy allow her to rise above the challenges she faced? And what does her story teach us about the nature of power and the role of women in shaping history? Cleopatra's life may have ended in tragedy, but her story is one of resilience, intelligence, and strategic brilliance. Her legacy continues to inspire people around the world and serves as a reminder that leadership is often defined not just by military conquests or romantic exploits, but by the ability to navigate complex, ever-changing political landscapes. Boring history for sleep. The unlikely success of the Mongol postal system. When we think of the Mongols, our minds often wander to the fearsome conquests of Genghis Khan, the sweeping military campaigns, and the vast empire that stretched across Asia and into Europe. Yet, beyond the bloodshed and the vast armies, there exists a much less talked about but equally impressive aspect of the Mongol Empire. its sophisticated postal system. Though the Mongols were known for their mastery of warfare and strategic ingenuity, their postal system, which played a critical role in their success, is often overlooked. The origins of the Mongol postal system can be traced back to the early years of Genghis Khan's reign in the early 13th century. The Mongol Empire, as it expanded rapidly, needed an efficient way to communicate across vast distances. Genghis Khan, a ruler who was as strategic as he was ruthless, understood that communication would be a vital tool in maintaining control over his empire. Thus, he implemented a system that would eventually become one of the most advanced and effective communication networks of the medieval world. At the heart of the system was the YAM, a network of relay stations and mounted couriers designed to carry messages, orders, and intelligence across the empire with remarkable speed and efficiency. These relay stations, set up along key trade routes and positioned at regular intervals, allowed riders to rest and quickly change horses, ensuring that letters and messages could travel long distances without delay. This infrastructure was not just about speed. It was also about ensuring that the messages were delivered safely and securely, often under challenging conditions. The idea of a relay-based postal system was not entirely new. The Chinese had a similar system, and the Persian Empire had developed a courier network of its own. However, the Mongols took these existing concepts and expanded upon them, creating a system that was unparalleled in its scope and efficiency. They understood that to maintain control over their vast empire, they needed not only military power, but also the ability to coordinate and manage information in real time. One of the key innovations of the Mongol postal system was its use of stations, mobile camps that could be set up quickly and easily in any part of the empire. These stations were strategically placed along trade routes, and their purpose was twofold: to provide a place for the couriers to rest and resupply, and to serve as hubs for the gathering of intelligence. The system allowed messages to be passed quickly from one region to another, often taking just a matter of days instead of weeks or months. The riders, or YAM men, were a crucial part of this system. They were selected for their endurance, speed, and reliability, and they were trained to travel long distances without rest. The Mongols didn't just rely on any horses. For this task, they used a breed known for their stamina and ability to travel for long hours without tiring. The horses themselves were an integral part of the success of the postal system. Riders would change horses at each station, ensuring that their mounts were always fresh and able to travel at top speed. It wasn't just the physical infrastructure that made the Mongol postal system so successful. It was also the network of trained personnel that kept it running. The Mongols employed a vast network of administrators, clerks, and translators who helped ensure that messages were not only delivered on time, but also properly understood. They even had a form of written language known as the Yiger script, which was adapted for use by the Mongols and allowed for quick and efficient communication across the empire. For the Mongols, the postal system was a tool of governance, a way to ensure that orders from the Khan could be swiftly communicated, and that important intelligence could be gathered from all corners of the empire. But why was such a sophisticated system necessary for the Mongols? The answer lies in the scale and complexity of the empire they were building. The Mongol Empire, at its height, stretched from the shores of the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Europe, encompassing vast and diverse regions with different languages, cultures, and political structures. Maintaining control over such a large area required more than just military conquest. It required an efficient way to communicate and coordinate across thousands of miles. The postal system was not just a tool for communication, it was a vital component of Mongol rule, helping to ensure that the empire remained unified and well-governed. The Mongol postal system was also crucial in facilitating trade and diplomacy. As the Mongols conquered new territories, they created a vast network of trade routes, linking China, Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. This network of trade routes, known as the Silk Road, became safer and more efficient under Mongol rule, largely due to the protection offered by the Mongol postal system. Merchants could travel more freely, knowing that the Mongols would provide secure passage, and diplomatic missions between different empires could be arranged with greater ease. But despite the incredible success of the Mongol postal system, there were challenges. One of the most significant issues the Mongols faced was the vast distances that their couriers had to travel, even with the relay stations and fresh horses. The system was still vulnerable to natural obstacles such as rough terrain, inclement weather, and the sheer size of the empire. The effectiveness of the system was only as strong as the people who ran it. So, how did the Mongols manage to keep this immense and complex network running smoothly? The answer lies in the efficiency of their administrative system and the loyalty of their couriers and officials. The Mongols were known for their ability to organize and manage large bureaucracies, and they used a combination of rewards and punishments to ensure that their postal workers performed their duties with the utmost dedication. As a result, the Mongol postal system remained highly effective throughout the empire's expansion. Even as the territories grew larger and more diverse, the Mongol postal system, while primarily a tool for communication and governance, became much more than that as it helped shape the future of the Mongol Empire. It facilitated the rapid movement of information, intelligence, and orders, enabling the empire to expand with remarkable speed. Yet its influence extended far beyond military and administrative functions. It played a key role in fostering trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange between East and West. One of the most significant impacts of the Mongol postal system was its effect on global trade. The Mongol Empire controlled a vast swath of territory that included the critical trade routes connecting China, Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. These routes, long known as the Silk Road, had been fraught with danger due to banditry, political instability, and the lack of coordination between empires. But under Mongol rule, the situation dramatically changed. The Mongols' control of the Silk Road, coupled with their postal system, ensured the safety and efficiency of trade across these routes, creating a new era of economic connectivity. Merchants, both from the East and the West, found that the Mongols provided unparalleled protection for their caravans, ensuring that goods could be transported more securely and at greater speed. The Mongol postal system facilitated the smooth movement of not just letters and messages, but goods like silk, spices, tea, and precious metals. The spread of ideas, technologies, and products between civilizations was significantly accelerated by this system. In many ways, the Mongol postal system served as the backbone of the global trade networks that we recognize today. The success of the Mongol postal system was also rooted in the empire's ability to bridge cultural divides. The Mongols, despite their military dominance, were remarkable for their openness to other cultures. They encouraged cultural exchange by allowing diplomats, scholars, and merchants from all corners of the world to travel freely within their empire. The postal system helped facilitate this exchange, as letters and communications between distant empires could be sent and received without the delays or dangers that had plagued earlier systems. Diplomatic missions, which once took weeks or months to arrange, could now be completed in a fraction of the time. The Mongols were also keenly aware of the value of information and intelligence. The postal system allowed them to send spies and scouts into foreign lands, gathering critical information about their enemies, trade routes, and internal matters within conquered territories. This flow of information gave the Mongols a significant edge in their military campaigns, as they could respond quickly to threats, adjust strategies, and maintain control over their vast empire. At the same time, the Mongols understood that efficient communication was crucial to the stability of their rule. Orders from the Khan or military leaders needed to be communicated quickly to local officials and military commanders. The postal system was essential in ensuring that these orders were delivered reliably and swiftly. The Mongols also used the system to disseminate propaganda and strengthen their rule, ensuring that their authority was felt across the vast expanse of their empire. Perhaps one of the most interesting aspects of the Mongol postal system was the creation of the Peza, a tablet or document that acted as a pass or official authorization for couriers traveling along the Yam network. This Peza was a form of diplomatic immunity, allowing riders to pass freely through the empire without fear of being stopped or harassed. It was a powerful tool, signifying the authority of the Khan, and it helped ensure the smooth functioning of the postal system by giving couriers and officials the necessary documentation to perform their duties. But despite the success and efficiency of the Mongol postal system, it was not without its challenges. The empire's vast size, with its rugged terrain, unpredictable weather, and ever-changing political dynamics, meant that the system was always at risk. As the Mongol Empire began to fragment, after the death of Genghis Khan, the postal system became more difficult to maintain. The empire's territories were divided among the Khan's descendants, and as these regions grew more independent, the once seamless network of communication began to break down. Nevertheless, the legacy of the Mongol postal system endured long. After the empire's fragmentation, the idea of a well-organized, relay-based postal system would continue to influence the development of other empires and nations. In many ways, the Mongol postal system can be seen as a precursor to modern postal and communication systems. It demonstrated the importance of efficient infrastructure, reliable transportation, and the ability to send and receive information over vast distances, a concept that would be refined over time in Europe, Asia, and eventually the world. Even today, the influence of the Mongol postal system can be seen in the way modern transportation and communication networks are structured. The idea of using relay stations and couriers to expedite communication laid the groundwork for the vast systems that now allow us to send messages across the globe in mere seconds. The legacy of the Mongol postal system is a testament to the Mongols' ability to adapt and innovate, using existing knowledge and technology to create one of the most advanced communication networks of the medieval world. As we reflect on the far-reaching impact of the Mongol postal system, we might consider how such a system came to be and what it tells us about the strategic thinking of the Mongol Empire. How did the Mongols, in their early years, come to understand the importance of efficient communication? What role did this system play in the empire's rapid expansion and its eventual domination of the known world? And, perhaps most importantly, what does the Mongol postal system teach us about the ways in which empires, both ancient and modern, maintain their power through the flow of information? As we close our exploration of the Mongol postal system, it's important to consider its enduring influence on the world today. The Mongols, often remembered for their violent conquests and sweeping military campaigns, also left behind an intricate communication network that would become a precursor to the modern systems of transportation, postal services, and even the internet. In many ways, the Mongol postal system wasn't just a tool of war and governance, it was an early form of global connectivity, facilitating the exchange of ideas, goods, and intelligence across vast distances. The core principles of the Mongol postal system, speed, efficiency, and the ability to cross vast stretches of land, are deeply embedded in the infrastructure we rely on today. Though modern communication systems are far more advanced, the basic concept of a relay network to carry information quickly and securely remains foundational to postal services, courier systems, and even the internet. Let's take a moment to consider the influence of the Mongol postal system on later historical developments. When the Mongol Empire fell apart after the death of Genghis Khan, the once cohesive communication system fragmented with it. However, elements of the Mongol network continued to be used for centuries in Central Asia and beyond. The idea of relay stations for communication spread westward, influencing the development of the Silk Road trading routes and later, the early postal systems in the Middle East and Europe. One of the most significant ways the Mongol postal system influenced later communication networks was through the creation of relay stations and the use of fresh horses to transport messages. This innovation in logistical efficiency would be adopted in many parts of the world. By the 16th century, the Ottoman Empire had a sophisticated postal system that utilized relay stations across its vast territory. Similarly, in Europe, the idea of relay-based postal systems would lead to the creation of national postal services that would become the backbone of communication in the modern age. Interestingly, some historians even argue that the Mongol postal system had an indirect impact on the development of the modern world's infrastructure and global connectivity. The idea of interconnected relay stations that served both trade and communication needs is mirrored in the way the world's railways, highways, and even air routes are designed today, just as the Mongols optimized their postal routes to allow messages and goods to flow efficiently. Modern nations have built transportation networks that rely on the same principles of speed, efficiency, and strategic placement of hubs. Perhaps one of the most profound ways the Mongol postal system shaped the future was through its role in the spread of knowledge and technology. The safe passage of merchants, diplomats, and scholars along the Mongol-controlled Silk Road helped facilitate the exchange of ideas between East and West. This exchange allowed for the transmission of scientific knowledge, technological innovations, and cultural practices that would shape the future of global civilization. For example, during the height of the Mongol Empire, scholars from different parts of the world, China, Persia, and Europe, were able to interact more easily, sharing knowledge of medicine, astronomy, mathematics, and other fields. The spread of the compass, gunpowder, and printing technologies from China to Europe was in part facilitated by the Mongols' ability to ensure that trade and travel across vast regions was secure and well-organized. In a sense, the Mongol postal system played a quiet but crucial role in the development of the Renaissance. The intellectual exchange that took place during this time was not limited to books and art. It was also about the sharing of scientific knowledge, which could only happen when systems of communication like the Mongol postal system allowed people from different cultures to meet and exchange ideas. Even in modern times, the legacy of the Mongol postal system can be seen in the way we organize and view communication and logistics. Today, the world is more connected than ever before, with information traveling at the speed of light through fiber optic cables and satellites. The Internet, in many ways, is a digital version of the Mongol postal system, allowing for the rapid exchange of information across vast distances. While the means of communication have changed, the basic principles of fast, efficient, and reliable networks remain unchanged. One of the most striking examples of this legacy can be seen in modern courier services and express postal systems. Companies like FedEx, UPS, and the global postal services in countries around the world owe much of their operational structure to the relay-based systems pioneered by the Mongols. Just as the Mongols had their network of relay stations and dedicated couriers, modern courier services have developed their own systems of logistics hubs, sorting centers, and distribution networks that ensure that packages and messages are delivered quickly and securely. The development of international communication, from the first postal networks to today's rapid global exchanges, was built on the foundation laid by the Mongol postal system. Their influence, while not always acknowledged in the modern era, can be seen in every package delivered, every letter sent, and every diplomatic mission that spans continents. As we reflect on the lasting impact of the Mongol postal system, it's worth asking, what would the world look like today without the Mongols' innovations in communication? Would global trade and diplomacy have developed in the same way? How did the Mongols' strategic thinking about information networks shape the world as we know it today? Though the Mongol Empire has long since fallen, the postal system they created continues to shape the way we connect, trade, and share knowledge across the globe. The Mongols may have been known for their military conquests, but their most lasting legacy may very well be the network they built that helped bring the world closer together.